First contact frustrations. The quantum sensors aboard the galactic research vessel Axiom were the most sophisticated in known space. They could detect the neural patterns of a sleeping microbe from orbit, analyze the genetic structure of any known species in milliseconds, and predict biological reactions with perfect accuracy. At least that was true until they encountered humans. Science Director Vexna stood motionless before the primary observation screen, her crystalline form refracting the soft blue light of the bridge. Her features, normally arranged in precise geometric patterns, had shifted into what her crew recognized as their species' expression of profound confusion. "Run the analysis again," she ordered, her voice carrying harmonics of frustration. Chief Analyst Zertok's tentacles flew across the holographic interface. "Director, we've already run it 17 times. The results remain consistent, yet impossible." Below them, on the surface of what humans called Mars, a group of colonists worked in the harsh environment, protected only by what the aliens considered to be primitively simple environmental suits. According to every reading from the Axiom's advanced sensors, these humans should have succumbed to the planet's hostile conditions hours ago. "Their cellular structure is adapting," Zertok continued, puzzlement evident in his fluctuating bioluminescence. "They're not just surviving the radiation levels, they're somehow incorporating them into their biological processes." The screen showed a human female lifting a piece of equipment that, according to their calculations, weighed nearly twice what her muscular structure should have been able to handle. Their sensors indicated her bones were actually becoming denser in real time, adapting to the lower gravity conditions of Mars. "Impossible," whispered Vexna. "No species can alter their biological structure quickly without technological assistance." "The humans appear to be doing exactly that," replied Zertok, "and they seem entirely unaware of how extraordinary this is." The observation team watched as one of the human colonists removed their helmet briefly to repair a malfunctioning filter. According to the Axiom sensors, the atmospheric exposure should have caused immediate cellular damage. Instead, their readings showed the human's lung tissue rapidly altering its structure to filter out the harmful particles. "Director," called out Junior Analyst Mel Wren from her station, "I'm detecting something else. The humans appear to be communicating through multiple channels simultaneously, verbal, nonverbal, and something our translators can't quite decode." Vexna moved to Mel Wren's station, her crystalline form shifting colors in interest. "Explain." "They're using something beyond standard communication patterns. It's as if their bodies are sharing information directly, adapting their behaviors based on subtle cues we can barely detect. Our most advanced social pattern recognition algorithms are failing to map it." Outside, the humans had gathered around their temporary shelter, sharing what appeared to be nutrient packets. The Axiom sensors indicated the food contained compounds that should have been toxic to most carbon-based life forms. "Add this to the report," Vexna instructed. "Humans demonstrate ability to consume and process substances that exceed standard biological tolerance ranges by factors of 10 or more." "Director," Zertok interrupted, his tentacles writhing in agitation. "You need to see this. One of the humans is injured." The observation screen zoomed in on a human male who had cut his hand on a piece of equipment. Before their eyes, the wound began to close, but what amazed the alien observers wasn't the healing itself. It was the efficiency of the process. "Their cellular regeneration," Zertok breathed. "It's not following any known pattern. The cells aren't just replacing themselves. They're improving their structure, learning from the injury." "Are they using nanobots?" Mel Wren suggested. "Some form of microscopic technology we can't detect." "No," Vexna replied, her voice carrying a note of wonder. "This is purely biological. Humans have somehow evolved to treat every challenge as an opportunity for improvement. Their bodies don't just heal. They adapt, enhance, evolve." The implications were staggering. Every species the Galactic Research Council had ever encountered followed predictable patterns of evolution and adaptation. Changes occurred over generations, not moments. Yet here were humans, casually defying one of the most fundamental principles of biology. There's more, Mel Wren added. Their neural patterns during crisis situations, they're unlike anything in our database. When faced with danger or difficulty, their cognitive functions don't deteriorate as expected. They accelerate. Vexna watched as the humans efficiently solved a complex problem with their life support systems, using tools and techniques that their sensors classified as primitive, yet achieving results that rivaled advanced technological solutions. We need to revise our entire approach, Vexna decided. We've been trying to understand humans through our existing scientific framework. Clearly, we need to develop new models entirely. Should we make contact? Zertok asked. The Council's protocols suggest waiting until a species has achieved reliable interstellar travel, but these humans, they're different. No, Vexner replied after a moment's consideration. We continue to observe. Humans aren't just another species to be cataloged and classified. They represent something we've never encountered before, biological innovation without technological dependence. As if to emphasize her point, their sensors detected another impossibility. The humans had begun modifying their shelter, and their bodies were automatically adjusting to the changing environmental conditions. Core temperatures, muscle density, even their neural pathways were shifting in real time to optimize their performance. Update the primary mission parameters, Vexna ordered. Our goal is no longer just to study human biology. We need to understand how they've achieved this level of adaptability. And more importantly, what it means for the future of galactic civilization. The crew of the Axiom continued their observation, their sophisticated sensors recording data that would perplex the greatest scientific minds in the galaxy. Below them, unaware of the attention they were receiving, the humans continued their work, their bodies constantly adapting, evolving, and defying everything the aliens thought they knew about the limits of biological life. As the Martian sun set on another day of observation, Vexna made a final entry in the ship's log. Human adaptation mechanisms continue to exceed all known parameters. The question is no longer whether they will survive in space. It's how the rest of the galaxy will adapt to them. The sleeping threat. The emergency session of the Galactic Council wasn't going well. The massive crystalline chamber, normally a model of order and decorum, had devolved into chaos as representatives from 100 species argued over the implications of the Axiom's findings. These humans must be contained, thundered Ambassador Carax of the Silicon Collective, his rocky form emanating waves of heat and agitation. Any species with such rapid adaptation capabilities poses an inherent risk to galactic stability. Science Director Vexna stood calmly at the center of the chamber, her report hovering in holographic detail around her. With respect, Ambassador, containment may not be possible. Our latest observations suggest humans don't just adapt to survive. They thrive on challenges. The chamber's screens displayed new footage from Earth's various space programs. Humans were pushing into the void using technology that, by galactic standards, was barely more advanced than controlled explosions. Yet they were succeeding, their bodies adjusting to zero gravity, radiation, and isolation in ways that defied conventional science. Look at this data, Vexna continued, highlighting a particular sequence. When exposed to cosmic radiation that would damage most species' DNA, human cells don't just repair themselves. They develop new protection mechanisms. They learn from the exposure. Ambassador Lix of the Quantum Consciousness rose from her seat of pure energy. Are we certain they aren't using some form of hidden technology? No purely biological system should be capable of such rapid evolution. We've confirmed it multiple times, Vexna replied. Their adaptation is entirely natural. More concerning is what happens when humans face failure. The display shifted to show a human space station experiencing a critical system failure. The aliens watched as the crew worked through the crisis, their vital signs showing intense stress, yet their problem-solving abilities actually improving under pressure. Their neural pathways reconfigure during crisis situations, Vexna explained. Where most species experience cognitive decline under extreme stress, humans become more capable. They've turned their fight-or-flight response into a survival advantage. The chamber erupted in murmurs of disbelief and concern. Ambassador Tulloch of the hive mentality raised all 4 of his appendages for attention. What are the implications for colonization? If humans can adapt this quickly to new environments, they're already doing it. Vexna interrupted, switching the display to show human settlements on Mars. These colonies should be failing. The environment is hostile. Their technology is primitive by our standards. And yet, she gestured to readings showing the colonists' bodies gradually adapting to the lower gravity and radiation levels. This is precisely why we must act now, Krax insisted, before they spread further. A sudden alert cut through the chamber. The main display switched to a live feed from a research outpost in the Proxima Centauri system. The station was experiencing a catastrophic containment failure, its reactor core approaching critical levels. That's one of our most advanced research facilities, Lix noted with alarm. The containment systems are failing across all backup levels. The radiation levels alone. The chamber fell silent as a new signal appeared. A small human vessel, part of their early interstellar exploration program, was approaching the station. They can't be serious, Tulloch whispered. Their ship's shielding isn't rated for those radiation levels. They'll be dead before they reach the station. Vexna watched the screens intently. Perhaps that's what makes them so fascinating. They don't accept impossibility. The council observed in stunned silence as the human ship docked with the failing station. Their sensors showed the radiation levels rising far beyond what any known species could survive. Yet the humans not only survived, their bodies were actively adapting to the extreme conditions. Impossible, Krax muttered. Their cellular structure is evolving in real time. They're using the radiation exposure to strengthen their biological shielding. The humans worked methodically through the crisis, their bodies continuing to adapt as they stabilized the reactor core. What should have been a catastrophic loss of life and technology became instead a demonstration of human resilience. Now do you understand? Vexna asked the chamber. We're not dealing with a threat to be contained. We're witnessing the next stage of biological evolution. Humans don't just survive. They transform survival itself into an art form. Ambassador Lix's energy form flickered thoughtfully. Then what do you suggest, Director? How do we approach a species that rewrites the rules of biology itself? Before Vexna could respond, another alert sounded. The human ship had completed its rescue mission, but their sensors detected something extraordinary. The humans' neural patterns had changed permanently, their bodies incorporating the adaptations they'd developed during the crisis. We don't approach them, Vexna said finally. We prepare for them. Because ready or not, humanity is coming to the stars, and they're bringing capabilities we never imagined possible. The council chamber fell into contemplative silence. On the screens above, the human ship began its journey home, its crew unaware that they had just demonstrated to the galaxy's most powerful beings that the impossible was merely a temporary inconvenience. Ambassador Tulloch broke the silence. Perhaps we've been asking the wrong question. Instead of how to contain them, we should be asking, what will they become? Breaking points. The joint mission was supposed to be a controlled experiment. The Galactic Council had finally decided to make official contact with humanity, proposing a collaborative deep space expedition. They chose their most advanced ship, the Starweaver, staffed it with their finest xenobiologists and researchers, and invited a small human crew to participate in what they called a cultural exchange. Nobody expected the mission to go catastrophically wrong within the first week. Hull breach in sectors 7 through 9, announced the Starweaver's AI, its typically smooth voice carrying unusual urgency. Quantum drive failing. Gravitational anomaly detected. Captain Xenavos, a veteran of the Crystalline Fleet, watched in horror as the ship's supposedly impenetrable hull crumpled under the force of an unexpected spatial rift. The human crew members, rather than panicking, were already moving with surprising coordination. Sarah, take engineering. Mike, we need those emergency force field generators online, Commander Elena Chen ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. The Starweaver's sensors showed her body temperature rising, metabolism accelerating, adapting to the emergency even as she issued commands. Impossible, muttered Dr. Corell, the ship's chief scientist. The hull is composed of quantum-locked alloys. Nothing should be able to. Less analyzing, more surviving. Sarah Martinez interrupted, her hands flying across the alien engineering controls. The ship's systems responded to her touch in ways that defied the established protocols, as if the human's inherent adaptability was somehow extending to the technology itself. The spatial rift widened, bathing the ship in exotic radiation. The alien crew members retreated from the affected areas, their bodies unable to cope with the exposure. But the humans pushed forward, their cells visibly mutating, not to succumb to the radiation, but to harness it. Their genetic structure, Krell whispered, watching his sensors in fascination even as the ship shuddered around them. It's not just adapting. It's evolving new protection mechanisms in real time. Commander Chen had reached the damaged sectors, her environmental suit's sensors screaming warnings she completely ignored. The alien crew watched in amazement as she physically manipulated the quantum-locked alloys, her muscles and skeletal structure adapting to handle forces that should have torn her apart. This is beyond cellular adaptation, Captain Xenavos observed. They're not just surviving the impossible, they're redefining it. Mike Rodriguez, the human engineer, had reached the force field controls. His neural patterns, displayed on the ship's medical sensors, showed unprecedented activity. Where the alien saw an incomprehensible emergency, his brain was creating new neural pathways, finding solutions that shouldn't have existed. Got it, he shouted as the emergency force fields flickered to life. But he hadn't just activated them. He'd somehow reconfigured them to resonate with the spatial rift's frequency, turning the ship's defensive systems into a makeshift repair mechanism. Sarah's voice crackled over the comm. Elena, we've got maybe 5 minutes before the quantum drive goes critical. Whatever you're going to do it fast. Commander Chen stood at the edge of the hull breach, the force field the only thing between her and the void. The sensors showed her body temperature dropping, her cellular structure changing to cope with the near-vacuum conditions leaking through the weakening field. Captain, she called to Xenavos, I need you to drop the force fields in Section 8 for exactly 2.3 seconds. That would expose you directly to the spatial rift, Corell protested. The radiation alone would. Trust her, Sarah interrupted. Elena's got that look. Captain Xenavos hesitated only for a moment before giving the command. The force field dropped, and Commander Chen moved in a blur of motion, her body somehow maintaining cohesion in conditions that should have ripped her apart at the molecular level. The sensors went crazy, showing impossible readings as Elena's cells rapidly mutated, adapted, and evolved. She wasn't just surviving the exposure, she was using it, letting the spatial rift's energy catalyze changes in her biology that the ship's scientists couldn't even begin to understand. When the force field reactivated 2.3 seconds later, the hull breach was sealed, not with technology, but with a crystalline structure that had somehow formed from the quantum-locked alloys under Elena's touch. What did you do? Corell asked, his scientific curiosity overriding his shock. Honestly, Elena replied, checking her suit's readings. I'm not entirely sure. It just felt like the right solution. The sensors showed her body already beginning to revert to its normal state, though certain changes, improvements, remained. Captain Xenavos exchanged looks with her science officer. They had both witnessed something that would fundamentally change how the galaxy viewed human potential. It wasn't just their ability to survive the impossible. It was their capacity to transform impossibility into opportunity. The quantum drive is stabilizing, Sarah reported from engineering. Though you'll probably want to take a look at these readings, I think we accidentally invented a new form of propulsion while we were fixing things. As the crisis subsided, Dr. Carell studied the medical data with growing amazement. Their genetic structure, it's not returning completely to baseline. They're keeping the adaptations that proved beneficial. In one emergency, they've evolved more than most species do in 1,000 generations. Captain Xenavaz watched the human crew efficiently managing the aftermath of the crisis. Perhaps, she said thoughtfully, that's why they survived when so many other species didn't. They don't just adapt to survive the moment. They emerge stronger from every challenge. The Starweaver limped towards the nearest repair station, its systems humming with unfamiliar harmonics from the humans' unconventional solutions. In the ship's database, a new entry appeared. Human adaptation mechanisms exhibit properties previously thought theoretical. Recommendation: reclassify humans from emerging species to evolutionary catalysts. The Evolution Revolution. The Galactic Science Academy's central laboratory had never been so crowded. Researchers from across the galaxy packed the massive amphitheater, their diverse forms creating a living tapestry of evolutionary paths. They had come to witness what promised to be the most significant breakthrough in xenobiology since the discovery of quantum genetics. Dr. Carell stood before the assembled scientists, his tentacles unusually still as he prepared to present the findings from the Starweaver incident. Behind him, a holographic display showed the intricate dance of human DNA during moments of extreme adaptation. What you're seeing, he began, isn't just rapid evolution. It's directed mutation with purpose and memory. The display zoomed in on a strand of human genetic material, showing how it had responded during the spatial rift crisis. The modifications weren't random. They followed patterns that suggested both intelligence and intent. Humans don't just adapt to survive, Dr. Carell continued. They adapt to thrive. Their genetic structure contains what we're calling evolutionary echoes, memories of past adaptations that can be accessed and modified as needed. Professor Xyla, the Academy's senior theorist, raised her crystalline form. Are you suggesting their DNA has some form of conscious direction? Not consciousness as we understand it, Carell replied. Rather, their entire biological system operates as a kind of evolutionary laboratory. Every cell contains the potential for specific beneficial mutations, activated by environmental triggers. The display shifted to show Commander Elena Chen's cellular structure during her exposure to the spatial rift. The audience watched in fascination as her DNA reconfigured itself, drawing on patterns that seemed to exist in some hidden layer of her genetic code. But that's not the most extraordinary part, Carell said, his voice carrying a note of wonder. Watch what happens when we expose these adapted cells to other human genetic material. The hologram showed Elena's modified cells interacting with standard human DNA. The changes she had developed during the crisis weren't just preserved. They were being refined, optimized, and somehow shared. They're not just evolving individually, Professor Xyla whispered. They're evolving as a species, in real time. Precisely, Carell confirmed. Every adaptation, every survival trait, becomes part of their species' genetic memory. Not immediately and not completely, but the potential for these adaptations becomes encoded in their DNA, available to future generations. The amphitheater erupted in discussion. This challenged everything they thought they knew about evolution and adaptation. Species weren't supposed to be able to deliberately direct their own genetic development, let alone share beneficial mutations across populations. There's more, Carell continued, once the commotion had settled. We've detected something else in their genetic structure. Dormant sequences unlike anything in our database. They appear to be waiting. Waiting for what? Someone called from the audience. We're not entirely sure, Carell admitted. But based on our analysis, these sequences appear to be evolutionary possibilities. Genetic programs ready to activate in response to new challenges or environments we haven't even encountered yet. The holographic display showed these dormant sequences, complex spirals of genetic information that defied standard classification. They weren't random mutations or evolutionary dead ends. They were more like biological blueprints for future adaptations. In essence, Carell explained, humans aren't just capable of rapid adaptation. They're pre-adapted for possibilities that don't yet exist. Their DNA contains what we might call evolutionary foresight. Professor Xyla's crystalline form shifted colors in deep thought. The implications for space exploration, for colonization, are staggering, Carell finished. Humans don't just explore new environments, they become compatible with them. Their bodies don't just survive challenges, they incorporate them into their evolutionary toolkit. The display showed a time-lapse of human cells exposed to various extreme conditions. In each case, the cells didn't just survive. They found ways to use the harmful conditions to their advantage, turning threats into opportunities for enhancement. But there's a question we haven't addressed, Carell said, his tentacles finally showing signs of agitation. What happens when a species capable of directed evolution encounters truly alien environments? What are the limits of their adaptation? And perhaps most importantly, what will they become? The audience sat in contemplative silence as the implications sank in. Humans weren't just another spacefaring species. They were evolution itself given form and purpose, a biological system capable of rewriting its own rules in response to any challenge. We need to revise our entire approach to xenobiology, Professor Hyla declared. These findings suggest that evolution isn't just a response to environment. It can be a deliberate process of self-improvement. Agreed, Carell said. But we also need to consider the larger picture. Humans aren't just changing themselves, they're changing our understanding of what's possible. Every adaptation they achieve expands the boundaries of known biology. As the presentation concluded, the scientists began to disperse, their minds racing with the implications of what they'd learned. In the center of the amphitheater, the holographic display continued to show the dance of human DNA, its hidden sequences holding secrets that promised to revolutionize their understanding of life itself. Bridge between stars. 10 years after the Star Weaver incident, the landscape of galactic civilization had changed fundamentally. The massive chamber of the Galactic Council no longer separated species by their evolutionary origins. Instead, representatives from across the cosmos sat in mixed groups, their very presence a testament to the changes humanity had inspired. Admiral Elena Chen, her cells still carrying traces of the adaptations from that fateful day, stood before the council. The spatial rift incident had transformed her into a living bridge between human and alien biology, and now she was about to announce humanity's most ambitious project yet. The Adaptive Initiative, she began, her voice carrying across the chamber, isn't just about space exploration. It's about transforming how life itself adapts to the cosmos. Behind her, a holographic display showed the massive structure taking shape in Earth's orbit, a biological research station unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It wasn't built from conventional materials, but from a hybrid of living tissue and advanced technology that could adapt and grow like a living organism. For millennia, Elena continued, we approached space exploration as a challenge to be overcome. We built barriers between ourselves and the void. But what if we could become part of it instead? The display shifted to show the results of joint human-alien research projects. Species that had once been limited to specific environmental conditions were learning to adapt using principles derived from human biology. Not through artificial manipulation, but through awakening dormant evolutionary potential that existed in all living things. The human genome wasn't just built for survival, Dr. Carell added, his tentacles moving in excitement as he joined Elena at the podium. It was built for possibility, and we're discovering that this potential exists in all of us. It just needed a key to unlock it. The council watched as the display showed various species beginning to exhibit adaptive capabilities previously thought unique to humans. Not as dramatically or quickly, but the potential was there, awakening after eons of dormancy. We're not just sharing technology, Elena explained. We're sharing evolution itself. Every species carries within them the the seeds of adaptation. Humanity's gift wasn't just our ability to change. It was showing the galaxy that change itself is natural, desirable, and within reach. The chamber erupted in discussion as the implications became clear. This wasn't just about humans anymore. It was about life itself evolving to embrace the challenges of space rather than hiding from them. But the most exciting discovery, Elena continued once the chamber quieted, is what happens when different species' adaptive mechanisms interact. We're not just evolving separately anymore. We're evolving together. The holographic display showed the unexpected results of cross-species adaptation. Crystalline beings learning to incorporate organic flexibility, energy beings developing new ways to interact with matter, hive minds expanding to embrace individual adaptation while maintaining their unity. The void between stars, Elena said, her voice carrying the weight of discovery, isn't just empty space to be crossed. It's an opportunity for life to reinvent itself. And together, we're learning to do just that. Dr. Carell's sensors detected the subtle changes in Elena's biology as she spoke, her cells still adapting, still evolving, still finding new ways to bridge the gap between what was and what could be. She had become living proof that the boundaries between species were more fluid than anyone had imagined. We propose, Elena concluded, that the Galactic Council establish the Adaptive Initiative as a shared program for all species, not to change who we are, but to become more of who we could be, to face the challenges of space not by hiding behind technology, but by embracing our capacity to grow, change, and evolve. The council chamber was silent for a long moment before erupting in unanimous approval. The display showed the hybrid station in Earth's orbit, its living walls pulsing with possibility, ready to become a cradle for the next stage of galactic evolution. As the session concluded, Elena stood with Dr. Carell at the chamber's observation window, watching the stars. "Did you ever imagine," she asked, "when you first studied human adaptation, that it would lead to this?" "No," Carell admitted, his tentacles moving in what had become recognizable as a smile. "But then again, that's the most human thing about all of this. You never just adapt to what is. You always reach for what could be." The stars seemed brighter somehow, as if responding to the possibilities unfolding below them. Humanity had come to the galaxy not as conquerors or survivors, but as catalysts for change itself. And in doing so, they had helped unlock the potential that existed in all living things, the ability to not just reach for the stars, but to become part of them.